Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. It's the project I'm looking at the moment is one of 5 in a small area of West Lothian that we're looking at. And it's the first part of a wider single site. This one's in Blackridge, which is almost exactly halfway between Edinburgh and Glasgow. That's the village of Blackridge, which is almost directly north of Harthill and Harthill Services, which you may know on the M8. Rachel and I discussed this because it's a project for it's over 55's for a housing association. So it kind of comes off the back of the Agile Aging Alliance event a week or so ago, and the launch of their document, which contains some really quite interesting stats, particularly about the change in demographics. That isn't just a UK-based phenomenon; it's a global phenomenon of the change in the demographics. You can see on these graphs, the balance of age groups across the generations is shifting, and this may have an effect on the housing stock that we have, the housing demand that we have, but also economics and the way that the construction industry looks forward and the issues that we'll need to tackle. As I said, Blackridge is where our project is. The site we're looking at is this allocation here, or the majority of it. Blackridge was one of a few coaching stops between Edinburgh and Glasgow. The slide you saw of the old building is located here, and the village grew up really initially around that route, with then later mining, and there's a mine here, a mine up here, and a quarry down here. And so the housing that historically generated was workers' housing in the village along the routes. So that's a picture from the 1940s, I think. The site we're looking at is this field here with the burn running through it, and that's the housing, the historic housing that's now gone, but some people in the village do remember. That's the application site for the wider area. The affordable housing part is this part here, and the reason for this strange shape is that this is owned by one of the large house builders with an agreement that we get services through here. So that's the application boundary. And it also incorporated part of the Bathgate rail line, which opened in 2010. And the Blackridge station is located here just on the edge of our site. It's slightly dislocated from the rest of the village. So what we aim to do through the wider master plan process is to connect the station to the village. At the moment, everybody uses their car to get to it. And the site was in the process, the early stages of being developed back in 2008 and collapsed. I became involved with it through West Register, doing an initial master plan for them quite a while ago, and then was taking it on through a series of different clients. At the moment, we're at the stage of doing a building warrant for the first phase. Interesting public consultation. We got some very positive feedback from the local community, particularly 2 groups. One was Beach Bray, who are a social enterprise organisation who have established woodland and are looking at community involvement in community growing and community landscapes. And that's going to feed through into this first smaller part of the scheme, but then the wider site, which has got a substantial area of green space at the centre of it. And what we want to do is involve that community group in the process of the creation of that landscape, but also, particularly in this first phase, I should explain that there's quite a substantial fall across the site. So what we've had to do is create a network to create an appropriate set of gradients. And that also kind of allows Ian's favourite topic of the bin lorry turning from last week, for that to run in, forwards and out. It gives us the ability to create gradient. But the landscape element of this is going to be a community garden that we aim to allow the residents to grow whatever they wish to grow in that space at the centre of the site. and it also acts as a focus in terms of the views out. That was just a description of the 4 metre fall from the north of the site to the south. So this is the proposal as it roughly stands. These graphics were done a slightly earlier iteration. The homes here and here are 2-bedroom homes for the over 55s, and these are single bedroom homes. I'll describe why we've done this arrangement in a little while. This landscape area has a hard gravel area in the centre, which discussing a kind of ability to use for balls or just sitting because it's a south-facing slope against a wall. The streetscape is entirely a shared surface with the exception of the road into the site to this point, and then it becomes a shared surface environment. I'll point out that is a retail development for a fairly large retailer who's going to come in and only recently agreed a lease on that, and the design of the building is going to change slightly. So it's a south-facing slope. The homes generally have their rear gardens south-facing, and these homes have their front to Craigan Terrace, which is the main route through Blackridge, but then open up to the south with their accessible entrances to the rear. I grew up in a council estate in Nottingham, and my experience of that was that we never used the front doors. Everybody I knew, we always used the back door. If somebody knocked at your front door, you knew they weren't part of your friendship or family group. So the idea of having this back entrance, the accessible entrance, to me feels quite natural. I know that some people don't necessarily feel that, but to me it works well. The living spaces look out into this space, and I will show you the plans. The same with the 1-bedroom homes. The living spaces are on this side of the building deliberately so that the social connection between the residents and the inhabitants of each home is improved, rather than having their living space to the rear where they may be more isolated looking out into their private garden. So that's the plan as it currently stands. The other point to make is, again, from Ian's point about bin lorries last week, the local authority were wanting us to put turning heads at the end of these spaces, or we couldn't actually because that's owned by one of the major house builders, so it would have had to have been, we cut these out entirely or change the arrangement. But now we've managed to get them to agree. These are a narrow private driveway essentially, which in future will allow pedestrian access through to wider phases of development and improve the connectivity through to that future development. That space, unfortunately, it's been nipped down a bit by Vista parking spaces. But in terms of the road arrangement, it's a shared service street aimed to make it so that it doesn't have curbs for radiuses. That's simply a mark to show that we can get a vehicle movement in there and create kind of 90-degree bends. And we've also, through the local authority request, created the chicane, which actually narrows in really very tightly and will reduce the speed of vehicles. So there's 3 designs of homes. 2-bed homes here and 2-bed homes here are two types of home, and the 1-bed homes, which I'll show you, are down here. So this is the garden side, the south-facing side of the building, with open plan living space and the accessible entrance, and then the kind of formal front door. We've also, because it's open plan, put things like the washing machine in a cupboard, and that can be mounted on a shelf, so it's accessible, not a low level, but a slightly higher level. If you look at some of the videos in the Agile Aging Alliance, there's talking about washing machines in that, and that's one of the things we did in this scheme. It also helps with some of the acoustic by locking it away in a cupboard. The 1-bed homes, again, all the homes have an open plan living, dining and kitchen space. So these look out to the public street so that there is some visual connectivity between the interior and exterior. One thing we did initially was to make this bedroom and this service element slightly further back and access the garden through the bedroom, but the housing association weren't too keen on doing that. We tried to argue the point that the corridor is a bit of a waste of space, but their experience is that they prefer that. two-bed homes on the south of the site have south-facing open plan living space. And what we've done in all the homes to a degree is create an entrance area which is sheltered. You'll see that on some of the visuals in a minute. One thing we've found through the process is that the client has two brief documents they want us to work to, which aren't necessarily consistent with one another. And then with things like lifetime homes, the information that's being produced by Agile Aging Alliance, and the happy homes, there's a lot of information out there for the standards to work to for age-appropriate homes, and it's not always consistent. So we've tried to a middle ground between the two briefing documents that the client requested we use. I think if anyone's inputting to any forums discussing standards for age-appropriate homes, the point of making a single standard would be extremely useful, because there's conflicting information out there. So this is a 3D down at ground level. That's the landscape in the centre. There are no curbs as such in the scheme. Everything's level access, and this is one of the entrance areas. All the homes have them. There's a practical purpose here in terms of not wanting the gas meter to be visible from the outside, which are quite ugly things, either as a kind of mushroom down at ground level or as one of the horrible white plastic things. So we've placed it in this element of the building, which acts as a seat at the entrance area, so people can use the public facing aspect of the building and sit in the public, within their own home, looking out at the public realm. It also hides the gas meter, which is built into the seat. It becomes a shared space between a pair of units. And what we're also doing is, in terms of construction, and I think this is important for the whole of the construction industry, is looking at Industry 4.0 and the network of things all the way through the process, from design through to use of the building. So we're designing it in a way where I'm sharing 3D BIM models with the client, and that they can access on their phone or on their iPad, where we'll be using offsite construction techniques as much as we can, and essentially printing the structural frame from the BIM model, but with a translation step in between, through to looking at technology that's embedded within the building to help the residents in their daily lives, whether that's assistance that may be needed or making it a smart home in terms of the technology that's embedded within it. And along with this site and the wider adjacent site, we're looking at techniques to bring that fourth industrial revolution techniques to bear. This one, we're looking at a panel system, and on the wider site, we're looking at a kind of platform-based chassis system similar to the car construction industry, where I've designed essentially a chassis which is adaptable for use in various house types, and each chassis has a standardization where they can plug together, essentially like Lego. We've got a color-coded system where you can plug green modules to red modules to pink modules and various combinations to create, from a selection of 10 essentially chassis, huge variety of options. And this is just making the point that the fourth industrial revolution is something that's coming forward at pace, and it will engender change in the way we look at delivering and inhabiting the built environment in the future.